If you're a fan of football, you're more than likely familiar with Will Anderson. He is the best returning player in college football, is already one of the best pass rushers in college football history, and will likely be the #1 overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. Will Anderson is an absolute monster, and for the most part, scouts were right. He was ranked as the #17 overall recruit in the country, but in today's video, I want to talk about the 16 recruits that were ranked higher than him. We're going to go through who they are, talk about what they have done, and how the scouts missed on having this guy as the top recruit. But before we can get into it, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and we are now ready for the college football season, so be sure to hit that subscribe button, smash that like button for the algorithm, and let me know what topic I could do in my next video. Now, let's get started. At number 16, we have the #2 running back in the country, and that was Zac Evans. Everyone knows Zac Evans as the guy who had the crazy recruitment, as he seemingly flipped around between 3 or 4 schools for months before he ultimately settled on TCU. When he became a part of the Horned Frogs roster, he was supposed to have an immediate impact. As a true freshman in 2020, Evans ran the ball 54 times for 415 yards and 4 touchdowns. He followed up his freshman campaign with a pretty good sophomore year. He ran the ball 92 times for 648 yards and 5 touchdowns before he ended up suffering an injury. After the season was over, the Horned Frogs made a coaching change and they decided to go with Sonny Dykes from SMU. Maybe Evans didn't like the new coaching change, or maybe he just wanted to get out of there, as he decided to transfer over to the SEC, and he will now be playing for Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, where he will replace Snoop Connor and Jerrion Ealy and will be the starting running back for them. At number 15, we have Bijan Robinson. He was the #1 running back in the class of 2020, and this guy has 100% lived up to the hype and deserves to be a top 5 player if we did the recruiting rankings over again. Coming out of Tucson, Arizona, Bijan was sold on the Texas Longhorns program. In his first year with the Longhorns in 2020, he was spectacular. He ran the ball 86 times for 703 yards and 4 touchdowns, and then had a pretty insane 2021 season. He finished with 1,127 yards, 11 touchdowns, and then also 300 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns through the air. He made a ton of Heisman-worthy plays, but after he got hurt, that was pretty much done, and we all know Texas had a terrible year as well. They failed to make a bowl game, but with a ton of transfers and big-time recruits coming in 2022, many believe that Texas football is going to be on the rise, and that Bijan could be a first-round pick, a dark horse Heisman contender, and at minimum, one of the guys to help bring the program back to its former glory. At number 14, we have Elirix. So far, this class has lived up to the hype, as the last 2 players have been spectacular, and Elirix has been no different. Coming out of IMG Academy, Rix decided he was going to take his talents over to LSU. He is the #2 corner in the class of 2020, and he definitely played like that his freshman year. He finished with 20 tackles, 5 pass deflections, and 4 interceptions, 2 of which he took back to the house for a touchdown. If you remember correctly, LSU lost a ton of defensive stars from the 2019 team, so Rix was expected to step up right away. He was a freshman All-American after that great 2020 campaign, but 2021 was a little bit disappointing. He only finished with 1 pass deflection, 11 total tackles, and 1 interception before he went down with an injury. There were also some questions about his off-the-field antics, as eventually he decided to enter the portal. He was one of the more sought-after transfers in the portal, and eventually he decided to settle on Alabama. Apparently there were a couple red flags about his personality, but Nick Saban will definitely get the most out of him, and I think Rix is going to be a star in this Alabama defense. At number 13, we have a very familiar name in Noah Sewell. Yeah, you're more than likely familiar with his brother, who is a superstar lineman and is now currently with the Detroit Lions, but Noah is almost just as good. Coming out of Utah, Noah decided to follow in his brother's footsteps and commit to the Ducks. He played a lot as a freshman, as he finished with 44 tackles, 2 sacks, and 1 forced fumble, while he was a freshman all-conference selection. 2021, he would break out. He finished with 114 tackles, 5 pass deflections, 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and an interception. Because of that, he was named a first-team All-Pac-12 selection, and just like the other guys on this list, he is seen as a first-round pick in 2023, and right now, he's probably going to be one of the best defensive players in all of college football. Sewell has definitely lived up to the hype. At number 12, we have Dexter. Coming out of Lake Wales, Florida, Dexter became the highest-ranked recruit in the Dan Mullen era and decided to stay home and play for the Gators. As a true freshman in 2020, Dexter got to see the field, as he finished with 19 tackles and 1 interception. He failed to have a sack or a forced fumble, but in 2021 those numbers would change. he finished with 50 tackles, 1 pass deflection, and 2.5 sacks. While he has not put up incredible stats yet, Dexter is seen as a guy who could be a big-time NFL draft prospect. Some scouts called him a late bloomer and compared him to Quinnen Williams and Javon Kinlaw. Dexter has all the physical tools to be a star, and if he has a breakout 2022 campaign, he could be a first-round pick. So far, Dexter has been a little bit underwhelming, but he has all the tools to change the narrative pretty quickly. The number 11 recruit in the class of 2020 was Broderick Jones. Coming out of Lithonia, Georgia, Jones was the number 2 offensive lineman in the country and was obviously a 5-star recruit. He originally committed to Sam Pittman while he was at Georgia, but when he left to take the Arkansas job, they reconsidered their options before they ultimately settled on Georgia once again. At 6'5", he was a mountain of a human being, but because Georgia recruits so well at the offensive line spot, he was likely not going to see the field. In 2020, that pretty much didn't happen, but in 2021, he would see some time. After Jamari Salyer went down with an injury, Jones took over for a couple of games, but was benched when he returned. Jones would play a little bit in the national championship game, and going into 2022, he is a projected starter, and if he could put all those tools together, could be one of the top offensive line NFL draft prospects in the country, and could realize all the potential he has. We now crack the top 10, and the first guy on that list is DJ Uiagalelei. Coming out of St. John Bosco, DJU quickly blossomed into a 5-star recruit and had offers from every school in the country. Instead of staying home to play in the state of California, he decided to go all the way across the country to the state of South Carolina. DJ was the second best quarterback in his class behind Bryce Young, and he was expected to have an immediate impact at Clemson as the backup. The guy in front of him was obviously future number 1 overall pick Trevor Lawrence, so he did not really get a chance to play much in 2020. At least that's what people thought. When Trevor had to miss a couple of games, DJ stepped in and helped them win a game against Boston College, and then put on an incredible performance on the road against Notre Dame, but despite the incredible numbers, they lost. 2021 was DJU's big year. He was now the full-time starter, and many expected him to be a dark horse Heisman candidate. It did not go as planned. After an early loss to Georgia in Week 1, DJ finished the season with 2,246 yards with 9 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Clemson football had a down year, and many were calling for DJ's head halfway through the season. Unfortunately for the Tigers though, they didn't really have a viable backup option, so DJ was forced to start the entirety of the season. He got sacked 21 times last year, so some believe the offensive line is at fault, but honestly, in my opinion, it was a mix of both. Going into 2022 though, he has a slim margin of error. They brought in 5-star recruit Cade Klubnik from Texas, and he has already been pushing DJ for the job. While Dabo will more than likely be loyal to DJ early on, if he struggles like he did last year, don't be surprised if Cade Klubnik is the guy. DJ needs a big year. At number 9, we have a beast of a human being in the former number 1 offensive tackle in the class of 2020, Paris Johnson Jr. Coming out of Princeton High School in Cincinnati, Ohio, Paris did not have to look far from home to find a powerhouse school to join. He committed to Ryan Day in the Ohio State Buckeyes, and the 6'7", 290-pound freak would have an opportunity to play pretty early on in his career. He would play in 5 games as a true freshman, but he was not supposed to be the guy right away. In 2021, he would start all 13 games at right guard, and became one of the top offensive linemen in the country because of that. Going into 2022, he has now moved over to the tackle position, and is a projected first-round pick, and is on pretty much every preseason All-American chart. There's not much more we can even say about Paris, besides the fact that he's just lived up to the hype, and he'll likely be playing on Sundays very soon. At number 8, we have probably the least known 5-star recruit of the 2020 class in Jordan Burch. Coming out of the Hammond School in Columbia, South Carolina, Burch decided he would stay home and play in the SEC for the South Carolina Gamecocks. At the time, they were still under head coach Will Muschamp, and Burch figured he'd play right away. As a true freshman in 2020, he finished with 19 total tackles without a pass deflection, sack, or fumble. It wasn't a great start, but he'd have an opportunity to develop in 2021 with their new head coach Shane Beamer. How would he do? He kind of got better as he finished with 26 total tackles with 1 sack and 1 touchdown, and 1 interception, which ultimately led to a 61-yard touchdown. So far in his career, he's only registered 45 tackles and 1 sack, but Burch has all the athletic potential and the tool to be a big-time SEC defensive lineman. The rumblings through spring and summer have a lot of people thinking Burch is a candidate to break out, but right now I'm cautiously optimistic, as we'll just have to wait and see what happens, but as of right now, he is not living up to his number 8 overall ranking. Clemson has had some good pass rushers over the last few years, and Miles Murphy is just the next great one. Coming out of Powder Springs, Georgia, Murphy decided to spurn his home state school in Georgia and go up and play in the ACC with Clemson. He was the #1 defensive end in the country, and at 6'5", 260 pounds, there was good reason for it. Many expected him to be an early contributor, and that is exactly what he did. As a true freshman, he finished with 38 tackles, 4 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles, which led many to pick him as an All-SEC which made many pick him as an All-ACC selection and a freshman All-American. Murphy was expected to have a bigger 2022 season. Murphy was expected to have an even bigger 2021 season, and that is exactly what he did. He finished with 37 tackles, with 2 pass deflections, 7 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. Because of that, he was named an All-ACC second-team selection and was a 4th-team All-American according to Phil Steele. Murphy is a projected first-round pick going into the 2023 draft, and if he can live up to the hype and follow the path that he's on, then I think he will be one of the top pass rushers in all of college football and will definitely be a first-round talent. Murphy has lived up to all the hype. There is not a single player on this list who has had worse luck than Justin Flo. Coming out of Upland, California, Flo decided to stay on the West Coast as he committed to play for the Oregon Ducks. He's the 2nd highest rated player to ever commit there and was obviously the #1 linebacker in the class of 2020. He had high expectations going into the 2020 season, but unfortunately it would get cut short. After registering 1 total tackle, he would get injured and miss the rest of the 2020 season. Tough break, but at least he'd be back in 2021. In the 1 game he played in 2021, he finished with 14 tackles and was named the Pac-12 Freshman of the Week because of that. Unfortunately though, he would get hurt in that game and miss the rest of the season due to injury. So far, Flo has played in 2 games in 2 years, and while some will definitely label him as a bust, he has not been dealt a good hand, and I'm very curious to see how he's going to do in 2022. We have now cracked the top 5, and the #5 recruit in the country was Zerrick Gilbert. Many call him the best tight end recruit of all time, and I don't disagree with them. Coming out of Marietta, Georgia, Gilbert had an offer from every school in the country, and at 6'5", 253 pounds, the guy was an athletic freak who was pretty much unstoppable. He eventually decided to commit to LSU, where he'd have an opportunity to play as a true freshman. Despite LSU having quarterback issues, he still finished with 35 catches for 368 yards and 2 touchdowns. Because of that, he was named an All-SEC freshman selection, and while the production wasn't out of this world, many saw the potential he had. LSU had a future superstar on their hands, but then he left. He decided he was going to transfer over to Florida, but then after a couple weeks there, he backed out of that and transferred to Georgia. Wow, now Georgia had both Darnell Washington and Zerrick Gilbert, and it seemed like those two are going to be unstoppable. That was until Zerrick never played a game. I don't really know what went on behind the scenes, and it's not my place to judge, but it does not seem it was an injury and something was going on off the field, so he missed the entire 2021 season. He is back in 2022 though, and joins the deepest tight end group I've ever seen. And the majority of people think if he has a good year, he'll be drafted in the 1st round. And #4, we have another Georgia player, and that is corner Keely Ringo. Coming out of Saguaro High School in Scottsdale, Arizona, Ringo was a 5-star recruit, a first-team high school All-American, and the #1 cornerback in the class of 2020. He had unbelievable athleticism and was always covering the opposing team's best receiver. That's why when he arrived at Georgia, he had immediate hype. Unfortunately, he was coming off a season-ending injury, so he decided he was going to redshirt. When Ringo finally played in 2021, he got a chance to start multiple games and was unbelievable. Ringo finished with 34 tackles, 1 sack, and 2 interceptions, one of which was the most important play of the 2021 season for the Bulldogs. Late in the 4th quarter, as Bryce Young was trying to lead Alabama to the win, Ringo intercepted his pass and took it all the way back for a touchdown, which solidified Georgia's national championship victory. Because of that, Ringo was an all-conference player and is seen as one of the top corner prospects in the 2023 NFL Draft. If he can build upon last year, he will have pretty much every box checked for the NFL, and he's a guy you're going to hear about for a long time. At #3, we have the top wide receiver from the class of 2020, Julian Fleming. Coming out of the state of Pennsylvania, Fleming noticed what was going on in Columbus and decided he was going to commit to the Buckeyes. When he would arrive at Ohio State, he would have a lot of hype, and many saw him as the next great star. Unfortunately, he was overshadowed by fellow 5-star Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Fleming quickly kind of fell behind. As a true freshman in 2020, he finished with 7 catches for 74 yards. With Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and JSN all returning in 2021, Fleming was going to take on that 4th-string receiver role, and that is exactly what he did. He caught 12 passes for 86 yards and a touchdown, but obviously in year 2, that is not the kind of numbers people expected.
Now as we go into year 3 in 2022, it's the make or break season for Fleming. JSN is back, but many people project Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka to be the next 2 receivers to step up. Not a lot of people are talking about Fleming anymore, and if he doesn't have a great year, he may either transfer or become a bust. I definitely hope the best for Fleming, as he was awesome in high school, and I want to see him put it all together, but with how loaded that Ohio State wide receiver room is, his margin for error is slim, and he's going to have to produce this year. While many people believe Will Anderson is the best player in college football, some would easily argue Bryce Young, and I would not tell you you're wrong for saying that. Young has had an unbelievable career. After originally committing to USC, he decided to flip to Nick Saban, and it was a great choice for him. After he backed up Mac Jones in 2020, Young became the starter in 2021. Many people doubted his abilities, but he decided to prove them all wrong. He finished with 4,872 passing yards, with 47 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Not only did he lead the Tide to a conference championship in year 1, he also won the Heisman Trophy, was an All-American, and had the second highest QBR of any quarterback in the country with 87.6. He's obviously the top returning quarterback in all of college football, and many believe the Tide are probably going to win the title this year. At minimum, they're going to get to the college football playoff, and Young is probably going to be a top 10 pick. Finally, we get to the number 1 recruit in the country, and that is Bryan Bresee. Coming out of Damascus, Maryland, Bresee was the number 1 overall recruit and the number 1 defensive tackle in the country. He decided he was going to commit to Clemson, and the 6'5", 290-pound mountain was expected to have an immediate impact. That is exactly what he would do. He finished the 2020 campaign with 23 tackles, 4 sacks, 2 pass deflections, and a forced fumble. Because of that, he was named a freshman All-American, and he helped the Tigers get to the college football playoff. 2021, he was expected to step up even more, but unfortunately, he was limited to 4 games. He still did finish with 13 tackles and 1.5 sacks though. What's even crazier though is he was still named a 3rd-team All-ACC selection despite only playing in 4 games. Right now, Bresee has all the potential to be a first-round pick and a dominating player in college football, but the question will be, can he stay healthy? So yeah, you just met the 16 recruits ranked higher than Will Anderson. I'm really excited to see what Anderson's going to do in 2022, and if he can put up the kind of numbers he had last year, then he's going to be the number 1 overall pick and may have a better case at winning the Heisman than he did last year. But what do you guys think? If you're a Bama fan, is Will Anderson the best pass rusher in school history? What player or topic should I take a look at in my next video? And be sure to subscribe and smash that like button if you want to support the channel. I appreciate you guys checking out today's video, and if you want to see another great college football video, be sure to check out all the other ones on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.